This is the Education Business Podcast for consultants and business owners providing services in schools. I'm Claire Riley, and I'll be sharing how to start, grow and scale your education business. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Education Business Podcast. Today I have a guest, and it's not Ed. I'm sure you'll be really surprised to hear. But my guest today is Abbie White. Now, Abbie White is the founder of LoveScience. LoveScience is now a franchise that goes into schools delivering science lessons, does after-school clubs. And we met actually because we live very close to each other. So it was great to have Abbie on and catch up as well as talk all things business. I think you're going to get a lot from the conversation. We talk about the mindset of being that business owner rather than that person who has a job that they love, and about the transition and growing a team. So listen in, let me know your thoughts. And if you think, I've got a business that people can learn from as well, then get in touch because I am looking for guests on the Education Business Podcast right now. Let's get to the interview. Abbie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Claire, it's nice to be here.
So we have known each other for quite a while now. We actually live quite close to each other, even though Abbie doesn't sound the same as me because I think you're originally from further away. But it would be great if you could just tell everybody how you've got here. Were you in teaching before? Were you not? How did you get to this point in business, where you are now? And how do you feel about it?
Yes, I am from all over the place. So we don't sound remotely similar, even though we only live about 10 minutes away from each other. I started LoveScience about 10 years ago. And I was before that a secondary science teacher. And it was really by total accident, which has made my journey, I guess, quite interesting and a bit chaotic. So my ex-husband was in the army, and when he left, we moved back up to Scotland, which, again, you wouldn't know by my accent, is where I'm from. And it was a combination of things. So first of all, I went back to get a job there. I was on maternity leave when I left, and I couldn't use my qualifications. So I had to go through a bit of a process to get that sorted. And in the meantime, I thought, well, I need to earn some money, and I don't really have any other skills apart from teaching. So I started running some holiday clubs, to keep my hand in and earn a bit of pin money, as people like to call it. And then my husband got quite poorly. So just as the point I could go back into teaching, I took on caring responsibilities, and it kind of threw our family into chaos because we didn't have any support, and my kids were little at the time. My youngest was only a baby, and I needed to be more flexible. And as any teachers here will know, there are lots and lots of perks to being a teacher, but flexibility isn't one of them. So really by accident, I had to do this because this is a thing that I could control my own hours, and I could put on more clubs when I needed to. I could take the kids along with me, which was really important. And I could fit it around, medical appointments and all the rest of it. So that's kind of how we started. And it was quite a few years and a divorce later and a move back to Yorkshire that I kind of thought, okay, well, actually, this is going pretty well. And I had at that point, I'd done a bit of supply teaching, and I was actually doing the education program in a children's home at the time. And I thought, well, why don't I take the plunge and do this properly? So in 2016, we kind of launched as we are today as a proper business with an actual strategy and everything else. And then we took on some club leaders, and then I moved to West Yorkshire, and we franchised LoveScience. So that was the beginning of our franchise journey, which was then totally derailed by COVID, which Emma, who runs our North Yorkshire branch, is just like my absolute hero because she kept it going. She'd only been doing it a couple of months, and we had to shut down totally. But we came through it, and she came through it. And we restarted our franchising journey now. So it's a kind of convoluted way, and everything's happened a bit by accident. So, and I know there should be lots of strategy in things, but largely something's happened and I've gone, oh, okay, let's do this. And then worked out the strategy after the thing has happened.
Do you know, I love that because, well, thank you for being so honest. But also I think, there are lots of people who teach business, talk about strategy. And yes, we need a strategy and we need a plan. And I'm going to be teaching that. So it is important. But what's also important, which I think sometimes we forget, is the willingness to take the next opportunity. Sometimes we think, oh, well, we don't have a plan, and we don't make a plan because we've got too many ideas, and we're worried about doing a specific idea and not doing another idea. But it actually takes a lot of guts to just step out and not know exactly how it's going to go and take the opportunity. And that is, I think, a key skill of being an entrepreneur and a key part of being able to make your business bigger than yourself.
Yeah, I think so. And I guess at the beginning, it was just out of necessity, and I found the more comfortable life has got, the less able I am to do that. So I'm kind of relearning to make those big steps now. But yes, it's kind of, I always say when people go, what's your biggest driver in business? I go, well, poverty, really. Because when my ex-husband got really poorly, we did lose everything in quite a short space of time. So it was almost a knee-jerk reaction. It was a real need to make this work. There was no choice for it to work. So just had to make it work. And there is something about kind of crisis that can bring out the best in people, not long term, but it gives you those tools to kind of create, I think.
Yeah, it's almost like you're willing to break through the mindset, isn't it? I think it is interesting because I think it can be driven by there's no other possibility. And I think it works both ways. It can be where you feel lack of some kind. So you really have to make it a thing by pushing through. Or we can do it where we think 10 times bigger and we think, well, it's a possibility and how do I get there anyway? Sometimes we can have this massive goal and think, oh, well, I can't do that because it's too big. Or we can think, well, how could I get there? So I think it's probably less, isn't it, about the actual circumstance and more about the mindset of, well, how will I do it?
Yes, especially if that one to go through the crisis bit to begin with. But I think mindset is the most important thing in any aspect of business.
I do think the crisis thing is important though as well. We're having quite an in-depth conversation before we started recording, just catching up. And one of the topics that came up is adversity, and you kind of need that. You need that in your life to be able to achieve something big, I think, sometimes. It's not that it's a bad thing either. It's actually really helpful to feel like you don't have something.
Yeah, it's the impetus, isn't it? It's the driver, and where it comes from is important.
What do you think then? So obviously I talk a lot about shifting your mindset from saying, oh, I've got this job that I love, to making the business bigger into something that one day you can potentially sell. And that's something you're doing actively. Do you feel like there was a point in time where you were like, oh, right, I'm going to make the business bigger? Because I think, when I think about people I talk to in the education business world, they might have a job that they love and they might not have made that step to think, right, I need to make it bigger than myself. Is the change, or what did you think the change was that happened in you to actually do it rather than just think it's a good idea in the future, of course?
I think that the big change was realizing what you talk about a lot, that I'm actually just as busy as I was when I was teaching, and I might enjoy it more and I might be in more control, but that wasn't really the point, to still be working all day, every day in school. And then you hit that limit. And it was quite interesting because when I started, people assumed we were a franchise. So you turn up at a school or at an event and people just assume we're part of a bigger company. And I was really precious about it. And I was like, oh no, I'm never doing that. This is me. And because it's your baby and you love it. And as teachers, we like performing, don't we? We like doing the job. Yeah. So I was really, really precious. And I was like, I could never have anyone else coming on. It's me that, I'm selling it. And then it was just a bit of a realization, that I was having to turn work away and saying, well, this is stupid. It is me, but it's not just me, is it? There's millions of great teachers out there. So it was that. And it was exactly what you now talk about. It was saying, and what will I do when if I'm sick, there's no one to take over? And also a big thing was, which is very, very dull, thinking I haven't got a pension anymore. So I need to have something that can pay for my retirement. And so the first step was taking on different club leaders, which was a big step because initially, I've got to replicate myself, but you can't. So there's no
Mm.
point trying to replicate yourself. So it's putting in enough structure so that your product stays good and it's true to what your vision is, and it's the same quality, but allowing other people to put their own spin on it. Because
Yeah,
in
otherwise it
our,
doesn't work, does it?
it doesn't, especially because we're facing the kids. I mean, kids are brilliant. They can spot a fraud a mile away. So if you go in with a really, really structured, well, this is the thing you say now, and this is what you say next. And I have a thing for behavior where I do jazz hands. When I do jazz hands, all the kids do it. And for some people, that's like their worst nightmare. And if you try and enforce your personality on somebody else, the kids just switch off totally.
Mm.
It was getting that balance. And once I'd kind of realized that, with several mistakes along the way, that freed me up to thinking much bigger and thinking, yeah, actually, this is something where it's my vision, but lots and lots of people could deliver that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I did have a conversation earlier today about, how you get somebody to do it your way and things like that. And I think we're kind of touching on some of those things that you kind of have to do it and you can't expect to get the right person straight away. And you're going to learn through having that person what you want and what you don't. And I hope I'm okay to say this, but your daughter works with you in your company.
Yeah.
And for me, it was my mum and my sister. And so really, because I could talk to them in a different way, or I knew they would do things in a certain way because of the family relationship, that kind of taught me along the way some of the skills that I needed somebody else to do, because it's quite hard to articulate, I think, at first. I think having people, not necessarily having all your ducks in a row, helps you figure it out along the way. But I mean, that's my experience. I don't know if you can relate to that.
Yeah, definitely. And certainly when I was hiring my first people, it was really interesting because I went down the route of choosing someone that was totally opposite to me, because I'm quite aware that not all children gel with all teachers, and that worked to a point, and then it was really difficult, and then you go, oh, someone that's just like me, but then it's not. So that was a really valuable, the first kind of year of doing that was really, really valuable, and it did teach me exactly that, the things to keep control of and the things to let go of. And now, yeah, with our franchisee, one of them worked for me for a long time before. So that relationship transition was quite easy, really. And then, yeah, my daughter, Francesca, she works with me. And it's quite interesting sometimes because she's grown up with this business, so she knows it inside out, and had vowed never, ever, ever to work for me ever, and then got a corporate job for a while, and now she's come back, as I knew she would eventually. But yes, that has taught me a lot, because you have the work conversations, but then we also have conversations that we do because I'm her mum, and when she's like annoyed at work and things like that, we have those conversations as well. So it's given me an insight to the other side as well, because I'm the person she vents to as well as the person that she talks about work to. So so every time we have a conversation, I go, oh, just make sure I note that, so that'll be good for the next time we do it.
Yeah, it does give you that insight. It's interesting that you picked up on that. Just a question then, just thinking about your model, do you feel like because you took on club leaders first, I suppose in your own, I want to call it a constituency, but it's an area, isn't it? Like a franchise area.
Territory.
Territory, that's the word. I'm thinking constituencies because of the local the election coming up. Did you feel that because you took on club leaders first, it made it easier than when you franchised, because you had a better idea of what you were looking for? Not that it would be the exact same person because they're going to technically own a business, but the right kind of skills.
Yes, definitely. And also it really helped writing all the kind of franchise operation manuals, because we've got quite a lot of handbooks of how to do things, and largely they were written when I took people on and went, oh, I better put that in a handbook because that's a common mistake or common issue. Because, of course, when you do it and you know your business so well, you forget that no one else knows
Yeah.
it at all. So I think that was, and we still have club leaders. I have club leaders that still run in my territory that I run now as well. And I think that was really invaluable. And it also, because although the relationship is different between an employee and a franchisee, it has helped to have that kind of demarcation point, to separate, because although they're running their own business and there's a lot of freedom in that, and I'm really, really lucky with the people that I've had, and I'm not fooling myself, it'll always be so easy as it is at the moment. There has to be a little bit of distance as well. So by being an employer first, that taught me that, because that was quite a difficult lesson to learn, actually, to keep the distance.
Yeah, and to understand the difference. When you first took on club leaders, because I think this is what lots of people struggle with, and you have a different experience of this to me. So at Classroom Secrets, we took on freelancers, and I suppose in some ways I could decide how many resources would be created, how much I would put aside for that. Whereas for you, yes, you could decide how many lessons people have, but then you've got to get all the students in for that as well. Did you feel like there was a period of time where you had to sacrifice to get somebody in terms of your margins, to make it fruitful in the long term? Like, is there a period of sacrificing, and how did you push through that?
Yes, I think when I first took on club leaders, I was in North Yorkshire at the time, and because I probably waited too long to take people on, because I was already turning down work. So in that way, I guess I was quite fortunate in that I had the work ready for them. And although there's some time for training and things, I did have the work ready for them. But funnily enough, I'm feeling that pressure now as we increase our franchising, because I step back a lot from delivery, because you just can't do it all. I was ending up being in school 5 days a week. I think, well, how do I grow this other side of my business? And this has been my latest learning curve. It was to step right back from that. And so I'm now in that position where I am kind of foregoing my safe income and my steady income to bet really on that being bigger in the future. So funnily enough, this is where I'm feeling the pinch more than when I first took on leaders.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? Because it's that stage of growth. Like, you're willing to invest a lot of what you have to hopefully make it bigger. And like, the word bet is just, it's so the right word. And I think it's better when you feel in control of it. So it's finding a way to get back into that mindset of, okay, well, how do we make it work?
Yes. And I think for me, and I think it depends how your mind's set and how your brain works. But for me, I guess I've put myself back into that position of, not crisis, but self-enforced crisis, because I know that tomorrow, if I wanted to, I could just go back and essentially run my own territory and it would be fine. But it's like the impetus that I need is like that semi-fear in the back of my mind that pushes you forward, because I've kind of had to be strict with myself not to just creep into doing more and more work, and to go, no, this is a decision that I've made. And so therefore there is no choice but for it to work.
Yeah. And it is a fine line as well, because sometimes I think we do need to step back in, but we've made our mind up. So and how long do you step back in for? Because I've been there quite a lot, where you step back in and then maybe it's for longer than you think. And that is a balancing act. And I don't think there's any right answer, is there?
No, there isn't. And I think it just totally depends on your circumstances and how you work. I've made a rule for myself, which I have broken, obviously, but I've made a rule for myself, nothing regular. So I won't take on anything that involves any commitment. And that means that I can do one-off things. And I do love it. So I do miss it. So it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. So I'll do one-off things, but I won't commit to anything regular. And that's kind of how I manage to balance that. Because I know how easy it would be for me just to slip back into it.
I love that, because I would say that's probably how I did it in the first place. It got to be a fear, because, the more you grow your team and then the more you end up having regular things with people, sooner or later, like, that is 3 people's full-time jobs, not just your own, and all the meetings. And I think I I don't do it as much now, but definitely when I was CEO, I would try and look at my schedule every half term and go, do I need these meetings?
Yeah.
And then erase, don't need that one anymore. Or could this, it's lovely that we have this catch up once a week. Could this be a fortnightly catch up? Things like that.
If you get into the habit, don't you, of doing things for the sake of it. I've noticed that in myself, and also part of when you shift the focus of your business, or you shift my focus in the business, you have to do different activities, don't you? So, now, my target market is different, for example. So you're doing different networking things and things like that. And you have to kind of suddenly you go, oh, I'm just doing all these things for the sake of it because I saw it on Facebook and it looked kind of cool. And so I'm now going back and going, is this actually really useful? Is this beneficial? Does this just because I want to go to that meeting in that place because I like it? So it feels like
great.
a constant. Yeah, no, it is. And it's exciting. And it is exciting. And I think one thing about growth is scary, but it is really exciting. And it brings back those feelings of right at the beginning when it was new and exciting and you were learning so much and the possibilities seemed endless. And I think with all of us, in whatever job we're in or business we're in, the longer you do it, the more comfortable it becomes. So it's exciting to have those feelings back.
Yeah. And it's self-awareness. I think that's what business really is. We can only grow our businesses to the extent we grow ourselves. And I think when we have this full-time job that we love and we're not ready to make it bigger than ourselves, then we've always got an excuse about why we just need to do it anyway. And you're obviously over that hump where you might like doing it, or it might feel easy to do it, or sometimes it's easier to do it and we can tick it off and get the dopamine hit. But you are questioning, but what do I really need to do? And that's just the self-awareness piece. But when we were growing our full-time jobs, we didn't think like that.
No. And also if you put it in the context of having a job, in my house at the moment, my husband, for no reason, because he's not even close to that, but is talking about retiring and things and what he'll do. And that's not even something that ever has occurred to me until he started talking about it. And it made me kind of think, well, what will I do when I retire? And I don't really want to, because what's the point in building this thing that I love, that I think is really valuable to the world, and then just stopping it? In normal jobs, you retire as a person, but the business continues, doesn't it? Whatever, the school's still open, the business still goes. And it is a different mindset. Because I think when you're a business owner, you're not kind of heading for that goal at the end. You might be heading for doing a lot less work, but still making the money, or doing it from a beach or whatever you're doing. But we're not always heading for that final giving work up.
Yeah.
And that was another realization, that if I was just working full time, delivering my science workshops effectively, when I couldn't do it anymore because I was too old or too tired or whatever was going to happen, then that would be over. And that was quite a light bulb moment.
Yeah. And that's scary to think about, because you've built this living, breathing thing. It's like building a house and then knocking it down. It's like, why would you do that? And, I give this example sometimes. We build a house, we don't put the doors and windows in, and then we can't do anything with it because we can't sell it because there's no doors and windows, and it's just putting that extra bit of structure in. But I love talking about retirement because, like, my in-laws like to talk about retirement, and they love retirement, and it's just not something that I am bothered about, because exactly as you said, I mean, in some ways I feel a bit retired now, even though I'm actually working full-time at the moment, because I'm really loving what I'm doing. I know that I'm building this thing. I'm not committing to things. I'm doing things, passing them on. But I don't want to get to a point where I get to 65, 70, I'm bored stiff because I've got nothing to do, and then I go, right, now I'll travel the world. I want to be doing that when I can really enjoy it, because there's plenty of people who get to that age and then don't have the health.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that I've always been a bit short term in that respect. And I've always been a bit of a live in the moment and not worry about the future. But I think particularly now, and it's funny you say about feeling retired, and There are sometimes, obviously, work is incredibly stressful and I have lots of sleepless nights, but overwhelmingly, I'm now getting to the point where I've built a life that really works around my life. So I can take time off to go and do things. I went on like 3 holidays in term time last year. And
Woo.
so I know, yes, which is lovely because no one else is there. So it's a brilliant time to go on holiday. So it's these things that are really valuable. And it means I don't think I'll get to 65 and be done with it, done with work and just can't do anything else. You know, it's working towards having the life now that you want. And that's that's a big shift from working. That's a really big shift. And knowing that you're in control of that. And there might be some sacrifices that you make to have that. But they're sacrifices that you've chosen to make. And that's really powerful, I think.
Yeah, I love that. It's important to know what you want, I think, because sometimes, you know how you said you fell into it by accident, in a way that was more running away from something rather than running towards something. And I think a lot of us ex-teachers end up going into business because of that. It's not necessarily why I set Classroom Secrets up, but it's certainly why I went on supply, to run away from that. And then we have to switch our focus to start running towards something, this life that we're trying to create. So it's been really helpful. I feel like I'm coming up with a training as we're talking. Like, what will this be?
I'll only accept a small commission. I think, though, as well, what is important is, like, what do you really want? Because lots of us go, oh, I want to work from a beach for 8 months of the year. And you think, well, actually, we can't because, like, I've got kids in school. So I'm not going to do that, am I? And my husband works in Halifax. So I'm not going to do that. So, and that, I think, is a good way of not going for your goals, isn't it? If they're not even a thing that you really want, then there's a good reason not to achieve them. Sometimes the goals are smaller, like, oh, I can take the kids to the doctors when they want. And that sounds like such a little thing. But actually, from teaching, it's so important. And, oh, I can go to sports day. And they're little achievable goals that actually make your life a lot better if that's what you want to do.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's funny you mentioned sports day because I looked at the newsletter from school today and for the first time ever, I'm going to miss a sports day because I'm in London at an event. And I feel awful about it because I've never done that before. And it made me realise how important it is to me. Like, that's one of the main reasons why I set up Classroom Secrets, to have that flexibility. And I'm thinking, you know, we've talked about adversity. So it's only once and I go to everything else and it will be fine. And I've not told her yet. But it makes it worse that it's one kid and not the other kid. But yeah, it's interesting that you should bring that up. But an exercise that we've done in the past year, which might be helpful, is really think massive about things that you want. And so at some point we want to move to a different house. And I feel like one of the things that we do is make it really hard for ourselves. And I think one of the reasons why we haven't moved is what we've got in our minds is not what we really want. And so we like described the house, and Ed put it into ChatGPT and it made this picture of it. And the coach we were working with were like, oh yeah, look at that house. And it made me realise that's not the house. That's not the house we're looking for. So sometimes spending more time thinking ridiculously big really helps you work out, yeah, but what do you really want? Because you're not going to go after it if it's just a pipe dream as such. Yes, we can have dreams, but if it's just something that you're not really that bothered about, because I think that's the thing. We can want these things that we think people should have, but if we don't really want it, what's the point?
We've had a similar thing, and it's funny you mention houses because me and my husband, we only got together in our 40s. So, and all our kids, our youngest is 13 and going up to 25. We kind of came together like you do in your 20s with not a great deal. And so we rent the house that we're in. And this has always been the thing, oh, we'll buy. And then we suddenly, not long ago, thought, well, do we really want to? Because, you know, because we've got 4 kids still living at home, 4-bedroom house, and the 2 children have to share, who call themselves the least popular children. Go, well, it's only stock until we buy. And we suddenly thought, well, do we want to buy? Do we really want to buy a 4 or 5-bedroomed house when in, 3 or 4 years, none of our kids will be at home, maybe slightly longer than that. But, they're leaving progressively. So we'll be in a 5-bedroomed house that we've bought for a family that now have their own lives. So we've taken that off the table, buying a house in its entirety, and thought, okay, well, we'll get to 10 years and then we'll see what we want to do and where we want to live and how we want our lives to be. And then we'll make a decision, because I think you're right. You think that you should have certain things, but if they don't fit, your subconscious is cleverer than you. So if you don't truly want it, you just don't see it. You don't go for it.
Yeah. Oh, so correct. And I think one of the things for us, we have a lot of things in our house that we really like. So it's actually really hard to find somewhere that's got all of that, because you know what you really care about. I think it just comes down to really knowing what you actually care about. And that takes quite a lot of thinking, but also I think being ridiculous to then bring it back into normality.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, because if you don't think big, you don't know where your limit is, do you? You have to come back to it and find out what it is. And it is that, the thing about flexibility, which I know is a massive motivator for teachers leaving. And sports day, I think, is that when you said before, sports day is the word that must come up most in why teachers leave teaching. It's just this one pivotal day, isn't it, that teachers really feel they miss out on with their own children. And so you can think big on that. Okay, do I want to be around for every single event my kids ever do? Well, probably not really, do we? Because otherwise we'd be just following our children around everywhere and it would be awful for everybody. But it's working back and going, yeah, I want to not have to work on that day in July, or I want to go and see that school play, or I want to not have to have the very last appointment on parents' evening. You work back to the things that are truly important, and then you can achieve them pretty easily.
And I think, some people who leave teaching probably, do have the means to say, do you know what, I don't want to work. And then they could go to every single sports day. But I also appreciate, that's not the kind of life I would like. I would hate it. Ed always says, you would just be bored, Stacey. You would go crazy. Because, one of the things, I feel like I didn't really get proper maternities. And, there was a time where I was a bit sad about that. Before I started the business, I kind of thought, well, I'd be like a maternal person. I don't think that was a thing. I think it was a pipe dream. But after the business, you can't take away that experience away. So it was just never, ever going to be a thing after that. But I just wanted to thank you, because I think we've had a lovely chat and we didn't really talk too much about what we'd go into. And I think, we've had a really good conversation. Are you glad that you left teaching?
I really am. I didn't leave teaching because I had enough of teaching. As I've said before, it was a bit of an accident and a quirk of fate. But yes, I really am, partly because I still get to work with children. So that's that fills that need in me that I had when I was teaching. And I look at my teacher friends now and the people I work with, and I don't think I'm employable as a teacher anymore anyway, because you're used to getting your own way.
Me neither.
I am glad. I'm glad that I left. I'm glad that I get to do the thing that I love, but on my own terms.
Yeah. Okay. I feel the same. I don't think anyone would say, no, I regret it and I want to go back. But, it's good to find out people's experiences. So just want to say a massive thank you. I think particularly if you are thinking about franchising, or if you are in the process of building that job that you really love and you want to think bigger, I think you'll get a lot of value out of this episode. So thank you so much, Abbie.
Oh, thank you for having me along. Thanks.
So I hope you enjoyed that guest episode. As I said before, if you think you have something to share, then get in touch with me on Instagram. You can find me at Claire Riley Teacher Entrepreneur or at Education Business Club. Talking of Education Business Club, I've started the live training sessions now. They're all on the planning that you need to do in order to turn your business from a job that you love into a business asset. So I really recommend that you join us and come along for those sessions. If you want to find out more about it, you'll find the link in the show notes, but it's www.educationbusinessclub.co.uk join-education-business-club. Okay? I'm going to see you next week. Thank you for listening to the Education Business Podcast. To get more information to grow your business, sign up at educationbusinessclub.co.uk.